Hi, and welcome to the FX Podcast. I'm John Montgomery. Our subject this week is the production Bono, Stories of Surrender, which is available on Apple TV Plus, as well as an Apple Vision Pro immersive experience. Our guests are Vico Sharabani, founder and chief creative officer of The-Artery, and Elad Offer, creative director of the immersive version of Stories of Surrender. It's great to have the guys on the FX Podcast, as Mike have known them for well over 2 decades, going back to the old Flame News days. Now, I personally haven't had the opportunity to view the immersive version of the production, but I can certainly appreciate how the post-production process was a bit mind-blowing. The guys dive into the technical challenges of creating that immersive content at 90 frames per second. It demanded new pipelines, rendering solutions, camera tracking, dealing with lens distortion, and more. All of it required for the Apple Vision Pro's unique display. So let's go ahead and cross the conversation now with Elad and Vico.
Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Hey, Vico, set this up for me, my friend. How did this come to be? Like, what's the structure of this project that got you guys involved?
So basically, Apple wanted to do this project with Bono, telling the story of his life. And basically, it's a book tour that he made a Broadway show. And then they shot it as a TV show with immersive components. Plan B and Radical Media were the production companies, and Andrew Dominic, the director. And they were looking to figure out the immersive component, which is a company that can do the technical aspect, but also understand creative at the level that they need for that type of talent. And we were like up against the biggest companies in the world. Obviously, you can understand that Apple, Plan B, Radical Media, and Bono can get any company in the world to work on this project. But
yeah, it doesn't sound like a group that would be hard to get a reservation at a restaurant, put it that way.
Yeah, definitely. So we got, we got the chops. We had to prove it in multiple tests and whatnot, but managed to come on top.
And so, Elad, when did you first get involved in the project? And like from your perspective, like was it always immersive, or did you get involved before it was immersive?
No, we got involved right after they finished shooting, and they shot some specifically immersive things with these sort of very special Apple immersive cameras that are extremely high frame rate, 180 fisheye side by side, so you get the full sort of 180 VR immersive experience. Also incredibly high resolution, and so they shot some of that. They had all the footage from the what we're calling now the cinema version, the sort of flat footage from the Beacon Theater. And at first we were just asked to like do something with the specifically immersive cameras, the immersive footage. And through a long journey of kind of building up on things and going, well, how about we try this little thing? Like we did this little test. What do you think of this? We sort of built up to a place where it went from doing about 12 minutes as a additional piece to the cinema version to the actual full 86-minute feature length project that is the first time Apple has done anything like that. And we had to deal in the way with things like I'd come up with an idea, we come up with a test, and literally the Apple creative team and the technical team would go, we don't know that we can do this, and let us come back to you. And then we'd work back and forth and figure it out, and it worked out. So to the point where they could do something this long on the platform and feel like the overall result would be at the quality that they're after, because that's always a guiding sort of star for them. Like you can't do something that isn't quite at their quality.
Vico, I just wanted to congratulate you guys, because what you've done is make a film, not like an experimental test, which I think is just magnificent, right? Like it really is to be applauded. I'm going to want to hit you on some of the technical stuff, but I don't want to go into that because it's very cutting edge, with the impression that this is some kind of elaborate test, because this works as a film, and congratulations for that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead, Vico.
yeah, definitely. It's we feel it's a very mature piece
Yeah.
of art for the medium. We've seen a lot of VR or 360 or 180 experiments, and this could have been one of them too. But it's definitely a very mature piece of art with I say that it's historically so well documented. It's like a full career and full life of a rock star that managed to write verbally everything into a book, make it as a Broadway show, make it into a film, and then cross over to the immersive, which we are very proud to have done that. And Elad had a very big part in doing all of that.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna I'm crying a little bit. No, I mean, you two are legends in the VFX world, certainly in sort of background where I come from, like of the flame compositing world, and to uh, hear you guys talk about that piece in that way is really touching. I feel like I got very lucky to be sort of the right person in the right time, and we've talked about this. We as a team got lucky that Bono is such an artist that there is that story to build on, but also gave us the room to be like, this is not a showcase of the technology. This is an art piece that's supposed to support his art, that's supposed to involve you in his world of visual art, that all the drawings, all the things are inspired by his drawings in his book, in his show. Some of it is actually drawn by him. He was working on an iPad and like doing his drawings, and then we took that in and incorporated it into our work. All of that gave us the space to really just kind of focus on that, on trying to make a film, as you said, in a completely new medium. Like that was something Bono said, and it really kind of struck me as well, is that it is sort of a very new way to do things. But again, hearing you say that, and in a funny way, I don't want to be stuck on the flame thing for too long, but I think my background as a flame artist, working in action in 2.5D, made me the perfect person to be able to like visualize all this as things that are laid out in space, because that's how we did all the work for years and years and years, right? So it wasn't hard for me to kind of come up with ideas and to talk to Vico about, oh, this will be here in Z space and that'll be that in Z space, and visualize it. And it was just kind of like the perfect storm, as far as I'm concerned, with the right talents in the right place to do that, and the backup of this, Bono, giving us the sort of wall to be like, no, make it art, and don't worry about needing things to fly around or do things or whatever.
Yeah, I think the thing that's incredible about it, and we'll get to the technical in 1 second for the people listening who are very keen to get to the technicals. It is a incredible technical feat. But at the artistry level, what I found interesting about what you do is, because I'd read the book, right? Like I'm a U2 fan. I'd seen the concerts, like, bought the t-shirt. But I read the book. But the thing that I think is really interesting about it is when you go into an immersive mode with the AVP, because the resolution is so high and because of the accuracy that you guys pull off technically, but also that is delivered by the headset, there's such a intimacy and immediacy of your physical relationship to the individual that happens to be Bono as a performer. It's actually, I mean, I understand how it works all technically, right? And yet there is almost like this different level of presence that you get that just you can't sort of imagine, or try to imagine, but when you put it on, you experience at a kind of very much an emotional level. Maybe you could talk to that.
That was everything we focused on to begin with, right? That was really certainly my one focus throughout, is how do we make sure to create the right feelings, create the right emotions? How do we stay true to his delivery, also not overwhelm him, because you could easily do things where it's like everywhere all at once and whatever, and then you'd forget that Bono is there. But he's such a great artist. His delivery is so captivating on its own that we could go for a more sort of less is more approach and just build a world and build an emotion and try and put you in that place with him. And the fact that it's black and white actually helped quite a bit, because I think your brain forgets in moments that even when we are not in a sort of truly immersive captured space, but we're just looking at him against black, sometimes at least my brain goes, no, that's Bono right there, because I can look around and he's moving with my head and everything. And then it gets cut off because it cuts to the next shot and whatever, and you're like, oh no, that's a movie. But there's certainly moments where you can forget that, and all of that just gave us room to experiment and try things. And we also had an amazing team of designers and illustrators that were able to work with me, because I am shitty at drawing, and each one brought their own artistry to it and their own way of conveying emotions. So it really was a joy in that regard to be able to focus on that. And also, all the execs kind of felt the same. The production company, we worked very closely with John Kamen from Radical Media. Every time we showed them these things, they're like, okay, we're feeling the right thing. Great, keep going, do more. That's also, again, that part of that story of how we came to do the full piece, is because they're like, oh no, we want more. Can you do more for this section? Can you do more for that section? Because we were able to find these ways to just kind of convey the emotion. So that is the magic, I think, that we always look. I mean, all of us always look for, right? Is as visual artists, is to, how do I make the person watching this feel something?
I think you get a sense of someone's personal space. Like, I almost felt like if I was any closer to Bono, I'd be embarrassingly close to him, like as in like uncomfortably close to him, which didn't happen. But I'll tell you, the other funny thing for me is there was a bit where the lights flashed on the stage, and it was in immersive mode, and I could see the Steadicam operator to the left, and I swear, I nearly got out of my chair and tried to walk around the other side of him to see the front of the camera rig, which of course makes no sense logically, right? But like, that's how much I felt. So Vico, if I can switch to technical for a second. So we've been discussing this idea that there was sort of some stuff that was quote 2D and then the stuff that's immersive. But can you actually explain just technically the difference between those two modes? And of course, then we'll get to how you bridge them.
There's actually a different engine that is being switching throughout, and the interesting thing about it is that the intention was to make it feel like a seamless thing. Technically, if you're asking about the way that it switches, this is something that Apple had to figure out, because nobody's done that before. And this was a critical part for us in order to be able to deliver a full film at all. So there were so many small pieces to it in order to be able to at all play it, because the Apple Vision Pro is not a usual VR headset. That all of the other headsets work on much lower resolutions, much lower frame rates, and when you take all of that into immersive 60 frames a second across 90 minutes, this is something that is extremely heavy to deliver across the world to the different devices or headsets. So they had to solve technical issues that they've never done before in order to being able to deliver that piece of content.
The internal Apple team, I think what really helped us in a way was that we came in and said, we know a lot about this world, but we don't know everything. You guys have been at it for a while. Help us help you, right? So we didn't come in with like, we know how to do this, we got all the answers, we figured it out, and here it is, and that's it, and it's your problem now. And this back and forth that we were able to achieve because of that, like a closeness of people in the weeds. Also, I think made them more willing to kind of go along with us to places where we were like, okay, we know this is hard for you to do, but can we work together and make this happen? Because it'll make the project better. And then how do we find the place where, oh, okay, you need us to have cuts in specific points because some parts are 24 frames per second, sometimes it's 60, sometimes it's 90. Like
I was going to ask
these
about
are
that
all things
actually.
we can.
When Vico mentioned a 60, I thought that Apple liked stuff, or whatever it was. I thought they liked it at 90.
It's
but
90.
You're saying that
it all gets in the end, it's all 90.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought that was the case. Yeah.
Yes. In the Vision Pro, it's all 90 frames per second. But some of the source material for us was 24 frames per second because it was the cinema version as is. And
so let me just set that up for people that haven't seen it. So I can view in the Apple Vision Pro a movie as if it's on a screen, as if I'm simulating sitting in a cinema, right? This is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is well, let me just check that. Is it 180 or does it go further than 180
it's
degrees?
180.
It is 180, okay. Because it felt like it went slightly beyond 180. So I've got this sort of, if you like, hemisphere of stuff that's going on. Inside that world, when I'm watching the film, sometimes I'm seeing what is effectively 2D work that's filmed with a 2D camera, but you guys have added three-dimensional graphics that are coming from literally behind it and in front of it. Sometimes, though, it's filmed with Apple, as you said, immersive cameras, in which case now everything is in stereo in an Apple sense, and you're still adding graphics and stuff to it. But now we're in this world where, like, I could only experience that part in the Apple Vision Pro, but so there's sort of like different modes, if you like. There's like the original shot, there's the mixed stuff, and then there's the full immersive stuff. All three of those present really interesting technical problems. But if I can just ask you like one major technical question, as I understood the way the Apple Vision Pro works is you're recording the footage, but of course you're getting like basically fisheyes, right? Like you're getting these very distorted images. So I'm curious how you solve the problem just technically, because as I understand it, there's kind of metadata that's going to go all the way through to my headset, which is going to make sure that it works for my eyes. But at some point in the middle, you guys have to put graphics in, which means you have to somehow camera track, you have to solve for the correct stereo offset, and of course you have to deal with the fact that if it's even slightly off, you're not going to have the quality that both you and Apple want. So we're talking like ridiculously high levels of precision. Could you just walk me through like how on earth did you do that?
It took a lot of experimentation is the truth of it. The Apple team gave us incredibly precise estimaps to be able to convert to lat long if we're going fully technical here.
Yep.
Even little bits that weren't quite right would make huge problems. We had all these issues where like things were like, oh, that's just an inch under the floor, and it didn't come from obviously the fisheye. The fisheye just shot the real world, but the where we ended up in, which I mean, we used every possible software around. We used Houdini and Maya and 3D Studio Max and Blender quite heavily, and so each one and its own render engines, and the issues as to how to get the renders out of there in a way that is both technically correct to the point that honestly, like a pixel or two off would mess with the whole thing. In some places, no problem, and then some places, holy shit, is just excuse my language. Like a difference in something in the SD map would mean literally days of manually trying to fix it until it was right. It's quite complicated and a long journey to learn all these pitfalls.
But Vico, I'm right in saying you can't just even do a simple stabilization because of the issues that I'm talking about.
No, and every one of us that went into the project was like, okay, Bono, let's zoom in. And you think that you can zoom in and just scale up an image, and you cannot. And all of those things are hard to understand when you come in, because you come from 2D compositing or 3D rendering, and that level of technical accuracy that is required in order to deliver for the Apple Vision Pro is not something that you can do those basic things that you're used to. So we would go for multiple rounds of tests in order to make sure that we fit into the technical QC that is required by Apple in order to qualify for those deliverables.
So did you get delivered to you lat longs, or were you being delivered the fisheyes from both eyes?
We got the fisheye with the SD maps.
Okay. And then
and also honestly, lat longs for editorial and some flat projections for other things. Like it's a bunch of different parts in order to even be able to like figure out what you're working with first before you start moving these huge files around, because it's just a lot of data, at least for the fisheye footage, right? That's just even getting it through the internet from one place to another is a big deal. So you want to be able to edit first.
Well, yeah, because just if somebody's listening to this, just to think about this as a mental exercise. Like you go from 2K to 4K, you go not obviously double, but it's 4 times, right? Because it goes horizontally and vertically. So we can simplify that by just saying, 2K to 4K, that's 4 times. But you guys are going twice, because there are 2 eyes, at dramatically higher frame rates. So if you were to like to actually do the math, and I'm sure you have, the actual data rate or the file sizes per minute of movie, it's got to be what, 25, 40 times what it would be on.
Much more.
You're shaking your head.
much more, because if you take a 2K, is you're going to.
This is Vico's favorite speech to give, by the way. He gave it over and over.
I'm keen to hear it.
No, but the problem is I forgot the math and I don't have it next to me. But you go from 2K to 14K by 7, and you jump up to 90 frames per second, which is another 4 times. It just multiplies. It's like 100 times more. So every 1 minute, or let's say 1 hour, we're talking feature length, right? 1 hour of footage equals 100 hours of 2K. It's just like, it's really hard to understand. We actually we bought additional computers and servers in order to take care of that.
Do you have a proxy workflow? Like, how did you grade this? Like,
we did not grade, but
you had to color time your stuff to the.
Well,
you had color in the graphics
on its own. The figuring out what even sort of the color space really is.
Yeah.
It's HDR. That's another thing of more bits in there. But it's not exactly like a cinema projection, and there's all these long conversations which we will not get into here, but unless you really want to. But how we get from the raw footage to like PQ, so we can preview it and all of that, and then on top of all of that, really and super importantly is like you have to watch this thing in the headset, because it's just different things that look okay on a flat screen. Even, like we made the artist wear the I forget what they call the red blue glasses, so they get some sense of 3D space, when compositing or working in the software in CG. But you have to see it in the headset, because your brain perceives it completely different.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
Things that look really messy can be very clean, because suddenly like this piece is way out there and this piece is way close here. So there's all this space between them. But you look at a picture, it's like, oh shit, there's a lot going on. All these things is like, we had to learn and relearn, honestly, because they are so important to the process. So it's like every time you feel like you've got something done, and then in terms of the complexity, you also have to do almost all the work twice, in terms of like things like cleanup and whatever. We had very little. And actually, I'm very glad. Originally, I was pretty certain we had conversations about, oh, they're going to make us remove all the camera people from the stage, because in the cinema version you don't see them. And then the group decision was made to actually leave them, and I think that that was very much the right thing.
Yeah, it was the thing that got me out of my chair trying to walk around and look at them.
Yeah, and it makes you feel like you're somewhere special. Like you wouldn't be there on stage with Bono and a camera crew, unless you're very lucky to have found a career path that gets you there. But yeah, so there's a lot. A lot is what. But at the same time, they also, as we were working, they were building the tools, right? So now they've like there is a version of Resolve coming out that supports a lot of this stuff already built in. There's obviously the Blackmagic cameras that are coming out, so it's not just the special Apple cameras that come with a special Apple team to do.
Yeah, but you guys
So
must have worked in advance of those being available, right? I mean, certainly I know you didn't use the Blackmagic camera, but were you using the prototype of Resolve? I would have thought you would have been ahead of it being even ready.
we were prototyping on the go with the Apple team, kind of as we were working, really figuring out. And thankfully, they are incredibly precise and sort of tuned in to all the things that we had to go through. Like I still remember, back when sort of floating point became a thing, and moving away from like, oh no, Rec 709 is all I care about. Like, if it looks right on my screen, it is right. To like all this understanding what a color space is at all, and all these things. So thankfully, we were able to get on the same level, and work through with them. We weren't the only people. Obviously, the Apple released a bunch of different projects, and so they were going through it with a bunch of other teams. But we were there's certainly moments there where there's a lot of discussions over, oh, this little curve here, converting from the raw footage to this middle spot. Do we go to ACCG? Do we go to ACES? Do we like all these things? Like, and how do we
what
not
color
lose
space did you end up
information?
in? Was it ACES CG?
It's PQ. What is it? 18 something. I'm so terrible with numbers, but it's a HDR
Sure.
PQ color space. But it does go through transformations to go from that completely raw footage to where it can be displayed in the device. And also, one of the advantages of the Vision Pro is the blacks are so black. More than you can have in a cinema, more than you can really have pretty much
there's no
anywhere else.
ambient light, is there? So
Yeah.
inside the headset, it's great.
Yeah, especially if you have, once they do the right fitting and you have the right seal, black is black, and especially in a project like this, where the cinema version is black and white, it does have that film look, but we were still able to like fade you into the black nothingness in a way that I think helped connect to Bono, because it's you and him telling these very emotional stories in a void sometimes, and then in these universes that we were able to create other times, and then on stage with him at other times. And I was laughing earlier when you were trying to come up with words for this, and it's really nice being on sort of like doing sort of groundbreaking work, but it also can be quite frustrating because finding the words without a frame
Finding new
of
language
reference,
for it, yeah.
and be like, but I really need people to understand it, because you want them to go and try it out in the headset, and then hopefully like it so much that they buy the headset and experience the entire thing. And I don't care about, I don't have stocks in Apple, but I do want people to experience this, and trying to convey that experience is just hard.
So getting back to my earlier question, Vico, about workflow, like let's take that the team is working and you want to review stuff. Like for you personally, are you doing a proxy workflow? Are you viewing stuff on a monitor, or are you just walking to the team and saying, give me a sidecar load onto a headset? I'm only going to see it that way.
It's all of the above. Sometimes I mean, you can't on every review or every thing that you want to check actually go through the whole pipeline of getting it into the device, right? So there sometimes you get a crop in order to get the editorial to understand something, or for us to understand something. All of us got to read pretty well the fisheye by itself or the lat long. There's been like certain things that once you get into the process, then you're like, okay, I know how it looked from last week's review. This time I can get on shot grid or and get an understanding for that. The team actually got really fast in uploading stuff to the Apple Vision Pro. But yeah, it's all of the above. Different stages, different. We had geography that everybody were in different places. The Rockstar needs to review it, and he's on a boat somewhere. I don't know where he is. So how do you get all of the people to review at the latest and greatest? That was a big challenge that everybody from producers to coordinators were trying to figure out along the way.
Yeah.
Elad, can I get you to back up to a point you made earlier that I wanted to loop back on? You said that Bono did some drawings on an iPad and that you brought those in. Could you just talk about that process creatively and how you actually worked with him to do that?
Sure. I mean, bottom line is Bono did great art, and they would hand it to us, and we would then come up with ways to incorporate it. It was all around.
Were you mimicking it? Were you like reproducing the look of it, but completely differently in 3D, or were you actually using the pixels, as it were, and then somehow
it's all of the above, depending on which section. So he would do that. Sometimes we could drop it right in, because we have sections that are sort of 2D, just laid out in 3D space, doing things. So sometimes we were able to use that. Many times we would bring it to our illustrators and say, okay, mimic this. That was, by the way, incredibly hard, because he's not great at drawing in terms of technically, but he's really great at expressiveness with his art.
I was going to say, it's like a cartoonist that gets the essence of something rather than someone that's trying to be photorealistic in there.
Yeah. But when you work with illustrators who have worked, who have done it since they were kids, they will draw these perfect things. And I literally had to go like, okay, how about you try and use your non-dominant hand or something, like, or draw with a mouse, because he just doesn't, he can't do that. Sometimes I overdrew things because I'm even worse than him. So I would take, okay, let me just trace what the artist on our team did, because at least my line style will be more like his.
Yeah, there's a naive school of art and if anyone thinks it's easy to do, try drawing like a child. It's actually really hard to draw the way a child draws.
Incredibly.
But there's an honesty to it. And I guess that's what we see also in this stuff. There's this sort of genuine, I think that's what audiences crave these days. It's kind of an authenticity. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because what you guys are doing is providing this authentic experience that is both simultaneously at the drawing level, a simplification of life to the essence of a doodle, and simultaneously with that, producing the most immersive, technical, highest spec kind of thing. And both of those it's not just art and science, but it's like trying to achieve authenticity and presence from both sides of your brain, if that makes sense.
I mean, I think, all three of us here, I think that's what drew us to computers and art, right? How you do visual stuff with computers is this line where you find how to tell emotional, touching stories with the sort of most cutting edge of computers and technology and all of that. So that was certainly the goal. And we really tried to, it was important to me to keep to sort of the punk essence of Bono's history. So everything was done by hand. Like the animators would try and do shortcuts. They'll just move something around, just keyframe and whatever. And I'm like, sorry, you gotta have to redraw that every single frame or on twos, because that's the punk thing to do. Is the punk thing is to be there, spray painting, doing rough things, whatever it might be, but it's all by hand. So that was really, really key to kind of the feel.
I'm just looking at my notes here. You had 9 illustrators, is that right?
I believe
That's what I think
so.
I got in the notes here, which is like that's a really good.
People.
Yeah, but what was the technical team that was beyond the illustrative team, if that makes sense? How big was that team?
We can go back into looking at it, but it was a combination. At the beginning, it was heavier on the TD because we were like tracking cameras, and you mentioned tracking cameras. Usually, you try to get the distortion map on one lens in a show. In this case, we had 2 cameras. Each one of them has two lenses, so you got 4 lenses from the get-go, just to get like a solid starting point. And all of the Estimap finessing that Elad discussed before. So we were heavier on the TD and at the beginning. Later on, we moved into a more of 3D illustrators and compers writing simultaneously, because you have to combine all the things together. So
Vico, can I get you to give us a little film school thing here for a second? So let's just putting a pin for 1 second in the Bono project, which is great. Imagine I'm coming to you with a new project, right? Informed, of course, by this enormous amount of work that you've done. I just wanted to have a couple of quick sort of questions that maybe people are kind of considering. So the first thing is, in this immersive environment, most people are going to witness it sitting down. That's how I sat down and watched it. But a lot of the sort of literature conversations are you should be filming at eye height. So does it matter, like camera height? If I'm shooting a new thing, do you feel like I can place the camera at any height, or should stay really close to eye line height?
Super critical. It's super critical. This is a fisheye lens. And if you go slightly above or below nose line, let's say, it feels completely different. It's not, when you look at the screen, then the angle means where the camera was. When you look immersive, it's literally where you are or what's the height of the subject, right? So you feel completely different, and it's not something that
okay, so I've got it camera height. Now, I can't tilt left and right, as in tilt and rotate, but I can move the camera forward and backward comfortably.
Yeah, it does happen in the throughout the show a couple of times that the camera dollies in or is Steadicam.
I'm incredibly prone to motion sickness.
Yeah.
I find it very hard when cameras start to move for no good reason. My brain does not like that at all. And personally, once I get sick, then that's it. Like next 6 hours, I'm out of it. So we were very careful to pick the parts that wouldn't make me nauseous. But there's certainly a lot of VR experiences out there where the camera is moving a lot. Some people don't mind
let's face it,
love roller coasters.
We have first person shooters that kids are on it, so they're seeing a lot of moving stuff right nowadays. But we definitely steer towards the more sensitive area because this is a wide production.
Okay, so my next question is, so lensing, you don't swap out lenses, you have one lens. This is kind of and you don't pull focus, you have like straight focus, right? So you have the focus. So how close can you get to the front of the, like again, I'm just talking not about Bono, but just if I was asking for advice, how close can I get to the lens, and do you don't touch it, right? It's like the same lens, same focus throughout.
Yeah, definitely the same lens. But luckily, we did have a few experiences of POV filmmaking in the past couple of years. So this, I consider it a POV filmmaking, right? Because you got like a stereo. And we had the Nickel Boys that was nominated for Best Picture this year, which is filmed from the POV of a protagonist, as well as Steven Soderbergh's Presence, which is filmed from a POV of a ghost. All three of them have something to do with each other, you know. And if you go technically, then technically you can get really, really close. The problem is that the eyes, in a stereo situation, the eyes will feel uncomfortable when the subject is too close to you. Elad might have even more accurate technical answer than me, but I feel like where you're placing the camera has even additional layers of meaning when you're doing POV storytelling than in normal film making.
So if I can't pull focus, if I can't do a zoom lens, and if I can't like fly the camera in, I'm guessing that,
and you can't zoom in digitally as well.
Oh, yeah, but you can do some of that stuff if you want to.
But not in the same cinema language that I'm used to with a normal.
It changes the medium. So if you look at like the Metallica piece that's on the Apple TV Plus platform, they are doing some of that. There's depth of field in parts. There's a lot of camera moving around. It's a choice of how to do that. I personally,
but you'd have to do the depth of field in post, wouldn't you?
Yes, for sure.
So here's one thing: like if you're going at 90 frames a second on a fixed lens that's wide like that, then you're going to have to pump a lot more light into the shot, right? Because otherwise, I mean, obviously sensors are pretty sensitive these days, but you've got a very, very high resolution sensor, so you're not going to be able to hide noise. So I'm presuming
they're pretty sensitive, and their noise reduction is incredibly good.
Oh, right,
so the set wasn't like, it wasn't like the old days where there was like 620Ks lined up outside the window or anything like that. We took out the lights in the end, but there's really one light lighting him in most of the performance. Some of it is blue screen, and some of it is in the beacon. The beacon, there's almost no lights. It's all just spotlights from far away. So that part is kind of okay. But what I would really suggest to anybody who's trying to film anything in this world is when you line up your camera, have a goggles connected, or the whichever device, preferably the Apple Vision Pro, because it's so incredibly high res that you'll get all the details. And see how you feel, what that makes you feel, because little differences can make a big difference. And in this specific immersive kind of storytelling, I think sitting is fine. It's not like if you're meant to move around the space, then I think it feels really odd if your line of sight is like dog's height or something, or even just a little lower than you were kind of used to. But also at the same time, the same experience has to be viewed by my wife, who's 5 foot tall, and me at 6 foot. And my friend was 6'6". But I think your brain relaxes into it at some point.
So if I don't know it wasn't as simple as this, but I've been talking to Vico about like shooting stuff, right? But if we just switch to the graphics now, so you don't have the same constraints because you could do anything with graphics, but how much do you model those same constraints into the graphics? In other words, did you feel like you shouldn't have graphics coming really close to the lens or virtual lens? Or did you, in other words, how much were you trying to reflect the filming environment in the recreation in the 3D graphics?
Very, very much so. We tried as much as possible to keep to the limits of the real footage and make it feel like it's part of the same capture. You certainly get some advantages. You can come much closer, and we have moments where we do that. We tried to not do the early 3D stereo stuff of poking you in the eye. It's not comfortable, and honestly, even the Apple team was like, let's avoid that, which I was very glad to do.
Doesn't support
but
the narrative either, right? Like it's not the sort of a
yeah, I mean,
it's not a
sometimes
jump scare movie.
sometimes it's useful. There's like moments in Desire where we did things like flash your entire frame out of nowhere, which felt like it was a good moment
Yeah,
to
the
kind
flashes
of.
are really effective, I think.
Thanks. We didn't know that would work. One of the greatest thing about working on this technology at this moment in time, doing this is that I think Vico had the same feeling of like that I haven't had for a long time of like, oh wow, I'm not sure I know how to do this. I have a plan. It should work, but let's see. And then sometimes it didn't quite work out that way, but you learn some things and then you could incorporate them into other things. I love that feeling personally. So,
When you look at the and Vika, maybe I should ask you this question just as sort of a principle, because I know this isn't directly what you guys were doing, but as a principle, when I look at a fisheye lens and I've got an actor there, they're incredibly small, it seems, on the frame in 2D, right? Because it's a fisheye, right? Like when you put it on, it's fine because I have vision that I'm not looking at specifically. But on the screen, on a flat 2D screen, they look ridiculously small. But now we were talking about like not having zoom and depth of field and all that. I'm presuming that audio now becomes such a sort of a tool for directing attention in a way. And so I guess this is such a musical piece, but was there much thought from your point of view early on about how we have the spatial audio and the audio driving and working in harmony with what you're going to try and do when you didn't have the sort of obvious filmmaking techniques that would otherwise be at your disposal?
Very much so. We from the beginning, we actually there was a stage in the beginning that we actually were experimenting with taking stems of of the music and driving things or figuring out spatial things. Elad sat with Jackknife Lee, who produced and arranged the music, and trying to figure out, okay, what is coming up, because we were working on the visuals while they were working on the music and the mixes, right? So what happens, what parts are in the edit or in the graphics later on will mean certain things in different parts of the frame or different direction. The spatial audio is fantastic in the Apple Vision Pro, and that was definitely a consideration and conversation throughout.
Ella, did you have like an audio script of spatial positioning, if that makes sense? Because I mean, I'm
yeah.
kind of a very visual guy, so I would imagine I'd
Yeah,
want to kind
very
of
much
know.
so. It was a lot
Yeah,
of notes of like this time code. I want that sound to come from behind you that's going to preempt this other thing that's going to, because then I want you to be able to like look up when something happens. Or I want to be able to direct your attention. Most of the time, we wanted the attention on Bono, right? Is the sound
sure.
comes from him, everything comes from him. But there were specific moments where the goal was to get the hairs on the back of your neck to stand up, and music is a big part of that, of like a whoosh or a move, or there's a scene with a light from the lighthouse kind of going above you. That was important for me, that not only would there be a sound that goes with it, obviously light does not have sound, right? But you want, like, I wanted that weight, but it needed to be spatial. It needed to go behind you and above you and all
Yeah.
that.
I thought the audio and the visuals worked very strongly in the Beacon theater environment when there's an audience. Like I thought, like the choreography, as it were, for my attention based on the sound with in working in concert with your graphics just worked really well in the theater environments. And I just, it, but it's a complex problem, right? Because it's not just like the sound
Yes.
is coming from over there, it's coming part of it from over there, part of it from here, and it's like a complex mix.
Yeah. The
Did you get?
360 sound of it is
Yeah,
a big deal. And thankfully, obviously, Bono has the best mixers in the world working with him, the best musicians in the world working
yeah, I
with
bet.
him. So they did most of it. For me, it was a simpler list of like,
But were
here's what
you
I'd like.
reacting to them, or were you doing graphics that they would then say, "We're not going to do this until we see what you've done"?
is kind of both
Right.
ways. Yeah. At the end of the day, I mean, honestly, I tried my best to listen to the piece and follow their like their lead, but there were certainly moments where the lighthouse being one of them, where like, okay, we need a sound here that is not part of the cinema version. This thing doesn't exist at all in the cinema version. So
But I
maybe
think,
I mean I don't think we fully explained this to anybody who haven't seen it, or maybe not fully explained it well. I know you tried, but basically there is a regular cinema version of this movie that you can go see at a movie theater, or on Apple TV Plus as of today, and watch in your on your TV and enjoy greatly. It's beautiful and incredibly well done. And then what we did is, somebody described it as pulling a warm blanket over that film and bringing it into this immersive 180 world, where in some parts we use that cinema version as a base and then added things to it in this 3D world. And in some parts we're just using, or not just, we're using this immersive special cameras to really put you on stage with Bono.
yeah, I mean, to be clear, it's not as if in the old days no, I say the old days, go back 5 years ago, it's not like you've got a 3D stereo version of the film. In other words, it's not like somebody's taken the 2D version that's on Apple TV on my home thing, done a stereo conversion, and that's what I'm watching in the headset. What I'm getting in the headset is effectively a different cut, a different version of the film.
Yeah, Bono called it a separate expression of the film. I think that's a good way to think about it.
Even the trailers are different. Like the trailers are dramatically different.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. That's, by the way, another one of those problems. Like, how do you even make a 2D trailer for the 3D experience, that makes it clear what it is, and is not, again, like looking at a cutout from a fisheye and or a lat long, and like, what the hell is that? Like, where, it's a whole new place to be in, that is exciting and can also be highly frustrating at the same time, because again, the simple things where we're like, oh, just make a trailer, and then it's like, oh, wait, that's not as easy as it sounds.
Vico, how the heck do you actually produce a project like this? Because, I mean, in one sense, if somebody, the classic thing in filmmaking is a director comes along and says, and then a battle ensues, and we want to see something we've never seen before, and you guys have got to like bid it. But here, you're not only bidding like the unknown in the creative sense, but you're bidding the unknown in the technical sense. Like, I mean, actually solving, I don't know, spatial audio's relationship that's going to be going back and forth with the visuals. Like, I mean, this is just uncharted territory.
Yeah, definitely. That part of the spatial audio was taken care of by Radical Media and the Apple team. So it's not that we produced the whole piece, right?
No, I understand that. But nevertheless, you're still trying to...
Yeah, we were responsible for the immersive aspects, the creative direction, the animation, all the visual effects, etc., which we still didn't go through all of it. But yeah, there were a lot of unknowns. It's a nerve-wracking process because you don't know what's going to be the next step. And the nice thing about this project, if I can say, that it started actually smaller and it increased in size gradually, because if anybody said at the beginning that this is the intention, where we landed, it would be very hard for everybody to accept and to build towards. Technically, creatively, client interface, that's a very, very complex thing to take on. And the fact that it started smaller and grew throughout the process is something that I believe that made it possible.
Yeah. So again, I'm not talking about the Bono project in particular, because obviously that's, but no, I'm saying, like, for a producer listening who is thinking, well, I want to do something like that. We've just said earlier 50 or 100 times more data rate. And some producers listening to this going, does that mean the budget is to be 50 or 100 times what it was before? Like, you've got any guidance on the sort of a relative complexity that might be reflected in budget for somebody thinking about a project? Hopefully it's less than 100 times.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not 100 times. You know, but I can't speak numbers for Apple cameras and for
No,
production.
I'm not talking about that. But from your point of view, like if a project came to you again now, knowing what you know, do you have a sense of like how much more difficult it is? Is it like, is there any sort of comparative, just for a producer that's trying to get some handle on how viable this is?
I would, whatever you ask, I will find a sneaky way to not answer you.
At least he's honest. I have to say two things. First of all, this was certainly a process through which I was very happy not to be the owner of the company, because there were just so many unknowns. And I think every company that's gotten into this world, until you learn, it's very hard to like gauge, okay, here are things that are going to be the same. We don't need to make huge changes or going to be a lot more complex. And here are parts that are going to be more complex. There's parts about how astute are the clients? Like, are they used to working in this workflow, or do you have to bring them with all of that changes the estimate of cost? There's certainly the technical difficulties, but at the end of the day, we all now have ways to scale up data and all that relatively quickly. But my advice to any producer would be find a person who's been involved in one of these projects to help you. Don't go out and bid. I can tell you that certainly some of our vendors at moments felt like they bit on a lot more than they could chew. Everything turned out okay in the end, but there was a lot of like, walking people off of ledges. And if you do it smartly, I mean, I think at the end of the day, there's a little bit of the Israeli thing happening here between Vico and I. Is like, there'd be a panic, and then we'd go, no, it's fine. We've been here, we can do it. And then sit down and make a plan and make it work. So it doesn't have to be huge multipliers if you do it smartly and
yeah, I think experience would be absolutely invaluable.
Yeah, and Mike, look, there are many things that you don't even realize that were done there. We talked about like shooting with the Apple immersive cameras, and we talked about the mix and media. That all of those things are already things that you feel are great challenges, but there are 3D sets in there.
Oh, really?
There are blue screen shots in there. All
Really?
of those, yeah, all of those things you don't see, and it's actually amazing, because that level of detail. This is actually a big achievement, and it's I like that it's a surprise for you, because you did catch on the fact that with a fisheye, a person looks like a tiny speck when they walk a couple of steps backwards, but the set falls apart also. So in certain places, you need to change scales in order to be able to get the framings that you want.
And I mean, the texturing of those sets needs to be at such a high level, because again, they appear small when you look at the fisheye on a normal regular screen. When I'm looking at them, they seem very much sort of normal size, normal resolution, normal closeness. That's really interesting. So did you do the post-comp type stuff all in Nuke, or where were you? How was the...
Yeah, we did start in Flame for a test. One of the tests that needed to make sure that we are capable of that. We started with Flame. We built a Nuke pipeline, and we built a unique Nuke pipeline using Apple Studio Pro workstations that turn out to be the fastest machines to render those comps, actually. So there were, at the beginning, I thought that we're doing it. My thought was, we'll do it on Macs because this is an Apple project. But it really turned out that those machines were...
I love
Period.
those M3 Studios. Yeah, the M3 Studio Max is a hell of a machine, and also you get a lot of RAM in there, which, let's face it, in your case you needed a lot of RAM, and you've got that mix of VRAM and normal RAM from the way that the chips are designed. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's you need a lot of RAM when you're talking about the file sizes that you're talking about, and the processing of that, just to be able to have it interactive enough to actually work with.
Yeah.
So
I want to say thank you here specifically to Kelly Bruce, who was there from the very beginning as our lead comper, and sort of, she didn't get the official title, but for me, it was very much a comp supervisor, VFX supervisor when it came to all that, because the level of detail, and you have to do it to two eyes, right? So any cleanup on edges and fixes on whatever, like it doesn't easily you don't just move the garbage mask around. We used some machine learning, we used copycat and stuff to try and help some of that, save some of the work. But at the end of the day, her level of detail and focus on detail really makes it so that, I'm a picky VFX supervisor, and I found very little to like still have thoughts on by the time we got to the end of it.
So before we got on the call, I was complimenting you, Vico, on how good you looked in a tuxedo because you went to Cannes with the premiere. But that was the premiere of the movie. But I presume in Cannes, in the audience, everyone wasn't donning headsets. Tell me, what's the reaction been like to people seeing the immersive version of the film, and what feedback have you got?
So we started showing it today to different people here, and people love it. Look, this is a great film by definition, and then it's a great experience that you've never had before. So everything that we hear is like raving reviews. Elad also participated in some of the press reviews that I'm sure that will start.
Yeah, I got lucky enough to sit in the press junket in Cannes, and after not being able to share it with anybody for a long time, being able to see people experience it was really amazing. There was one specific journalist from Germany who said he'd been covering Bono for 40 years, and then he took off the Vision Pro and he was speechless. And he said how he was having a hard time finding the words to describe what he just saw, and he was so moved by it. First of all, for me, it was a huge dopamine hit, and obviously very exciting. But also, I was like, no, but I need you to find the words. It's like because people need to know about this somehow.
Also, the songs are very emotive, right? Sunday Bloody Sunday is just one heck of a song before you even got anywhere, right? Like it's
yeah. U2 just released 3 of the songs from this as a EP on I think maybe just vinyl, definitely on vinyl from this. His versions. It's a Sunday Bloody Sunday that I know he is extremely proud of this specific performance. Pride, and I forget what was the last one. But yeah, if you're a U2 fan.
I guess for people like me, it's been kind of the soundtrack of our lives, right? Like, I remember, New Year's, like the original, like Gloria kind of coming out and noticing U2 for the first time. So literally, these are songs for the soundtrack of my entire life. But yeah, it's so interesting to experience them in such a different way. We haven't really focused on the music, but of course, it is one of the great musical legacies of our entire generation. So definitely good material to be working on. And I'm glad you guys had such a good experience in doing it. Thanks so much for taking time to talk to us about the project. Congratulations again. And yeah, it's great. I look forward to seeing where this goes. And as you say, it's opening up a bit with new tools like the DaVinci and the Blackmagic camera. So we expect to see more of this stuff. And I've got to say, I wasn't that surprised, I guess, in one sense, because you guys have such a track record of doing cutting edge stuff and really like blowing the barn doors off things from an innovative point of view. But as I started this discussion, it is just a good film, right? And I think it's great that it's not just an experiment and it's not just a conversion of a film, but it's actually its own film. So again, thanks so much for taking time to talk to us.
Well, thank you, Mike. That was amazing always talk to you, but especially hearing you say all that.
Now, I found that to be a really interesting conversation and quite an exercise of wrapping my head around the technical requirements for the film. A big thanks to Elad and Vico for taking the time to chat with us. Well, that's it for this episode. For Mike Seymour, I'm John Montgomery. Thanks for listening.